Hey, greetings, everyone. This is your host and vice president for the American Institute of Stress. It's Will Heckman. Thanks for joining us again today. I'd like to ask all of you that are listening to this podcast today, go to stress.org, subscribe to our magazines. They're absolutely free. And also, while you're there, make sure you check out all the information about stress and stress-related issues. And if you're watching us, listen, we have a goal. We need to get like 5,000. That's not much. 5,000 more subscribers to hit a real benchmark. So please subscribe. All right. Before we start, I'd like to tell you some exciting news. We know that stress is everywhere, but the ability to manage it effectively is a skill that can be learned. And now you can become a certified stress coach. The Certified Stress Coach course from the American Institute of Stress provides practical, evidence-based training for professionals and individuals who want to better understand stress and help others thrive. Whether you're a wellness professional, a coach, an educator, you can be an HR leader, healthcare worker, or a first responder, simply someone looking to improve your own well-being, this course equips you with proven tools and strategies that make a real difference. And you learn how to recognize stress, build resilience, support others, and create a healthier workplace, families, and communities. So invest in yourself, become a trusted resource for stress management. You can enroll today simply by going to stress.org, and you could be making a positive impact on other people's lives as well as your own. So today's episode, we're diving into a topic that affects nearly everyone in digital stress and the way modern life keeps our brain and nervous system stuck in a constant overdrive. From nonstop notifications, endless scrolling, to information overload, and fractured attention. Our brains were never designed to process this much input all day, every day. So we're going to explore how digital overload fuels anxiety, it disrupts sleep, it weakens your focus and contributes to burnout, while also discussing what neuroscience teaches us about calming the nervous system. And most importantly, we'll share some practical strategies, including mindfulness, breathwork, and simply daily habits that can help restore resilience, clarity, and a greater sense of balance in an always connected world. Joining us today is a friend of mine, Dr. Brian Ramos. He's a Yale-trained neuroscientist, and he's also a stress expert. He is the founder of Zen Brain Academy, which is a brain health and nervous system training platform built to help people thrive in the AI-powered digital age. His signature M.B.M.N.S framework, I hope I got that right, Brian, which stands for mindfulness, breathwork, movement, nature, and sleep, gives us overwhelmed achievers a practical, science-backed system for managing chronic stress and digital overload. He's the author of The Art of Stress-Free Living, also Inside Out Calm, and is currently writing, if I'm correct, The Digital Age Dilemma, which is a deeper exploration in how modern technology is reshaping the human nervous system. Also, through his weekly newsletter, the Zen Brain Blueprint on Beehive, his Zen Brain YouTube channel, and his upcoming AI brain coaching app, HeyZenith.ai. Is that right, Brian? Shake it, yes.
Yes, correct.
He's on a mission, and has been for quite a while, to help today's professionals protect their attention, restore their calm, and reclaim their cognitive edge. We are also proud to have him as a fellow at the American Institute of Stress. So please join me in welcoming my friend, Dr. Brian Ramos. Hey, Brian, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate this.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get a little bit more involved and
we're glad.
start teaching a bit more again. So it's a good opportunity.
This is a topic we were talking before the show that I really wanted to talk about for a long time and get into different things. We usually get questions like, I like these glasses block the blue rays
Mhm.
because I'm always looking at a computer. Things like that, more practical things. But it goes a lot deeper than that. We hear more than ever about digital stress from a neuroscience perspective. What is actually happening in our brain, our bodies, when we are constantly connected, and we're scrolling, and we have to respond. So
Yeah,
what's going on?
the thing is that our brain really didn't evolve for being interrupted every few minutes. And a lot of times what happens is that when people in the digital age, they're doing stuff, they have multiple tabs. Maybe their desk is a little bit crazy. They got paperwork going around. They're flipping here, flipping there. Their phone is going off. And this creates this kind of like scroll, respond, notification loop that runs three parts of your nervous systems at once, kind of like an overdrive. And so you're basically asking your brain to do something that is really not designed to do. And one of the things is often I do videos on the multitasking myth. So a lot of times people think that the brain runs in parallel, but it can only run in series. So it can focus on one thing, and then when it's done with that, it can focus on something else. So what people really train their brain to do is to focus for a little bit of time and then switch and focus and switch. So that puts a lot of stress on your attentional networks. They're being yanked here and there. And every one of those notifications or triggers is causing this reorienting response. That's this kind of like reflex where every time that I go and move from whatever I was doing to something new, it pulls my cognitive resources away from what I was doing to this new thing. And then when I come back, I have to almost like reboot again to start whatever I was doing. There's like an inertia of sorts that I have to overcome again to get back in the flow. So one of the keys is really to learn how to do this kind of like deep focus work where I focus on one thing, and when I'm done, then I move to the next thing, but I have breaks in between. The other thing is that the digital age is really designed like slot machines in a casino. So it's intermittent, unpredictable rewards that people get through likes, through notifications, through things that they enjoy watching. And it's this kind of roller coaster effect that is really doing one thing. It is creating addiction. It builds compulsive phone checking, phone grabbing, notifications. And if you look at people when I know this because I'm a parent, so when I take up the phone away from my son, for example, they react like addicts, and it
Yeah, oh my
really
God.
is.
Yeah.
It's really the most addictive. I'm not, I wouldn't say substance, but really the most addictive device or object that there is in the world. And the last thing is our prefrontal cortex, where I did a video recently on how uh, it starts to work like overtime. It's just working harder, like you're working with more effort and producing less. And so the part that people don't realize is that that multitasking habit of always getting pulled, being highly distractible, is just increasing the activity of these areas, is making us less efficient, less effective, and creating a lot of problems. And so our brain is really designed, in a sense, to be an instrument that should be tuned for depth, for presence. And before I pause, I'll say this is why I say all the time that the number one ingredient that people need in the digital age is some sort of mindfulness or meditative practice that is going to allow their brain to become more tuned and more present.
You're so right, and I agree with you. And I've seen that video of yours, and I agreed with it when I saw it. But multitasking is almost impossible. You can't do that many things at once and doing well. You need to, like you said, it's almost like a toggle switch. Toggle this on, toggle it off, toggle this on, toggle it off, toggle back to that. But it goes beyond even work. In other words, and you're right. I taught teenagers for 30 years. You take away their phone, oh my God. It's you were right. They're like junkies. Like, so, you go to the gym, I'm looking around. I'm working out. I don't even have my phone with me. And everybody's on their phone while they're working out. It pisses me off because I'm waiting for that machine and you got to wait for your like.
Oh yeah, they'll work out and then all of a sudden they'll be on the phone for like 5 minutes and they'll work out
Right.
again.
And sit there. Like, they're going, dude, really? But you were also right about the likes and the positive feedback. We talked a little bit about that. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. I mean, you talk about the gym. You go to the gym, you walk on a treadmill because you're too lazy to get your butt outside and walk, in nature and stuff. And some guy comes on the screen because you walked a mile and says, "Hey, you're a champ." No, you're not. You can just walk the mile inside in air conditioning with a water, please. Or you ask ChatGTP a stupid question, and it says, "Hey, great question. You asked it, should I drink lumpy milk?" It's a dumb question. No, don't drink lumpy milk. ChatGPT gives you positive. So all of these digital, brown nosing, positive feedback things are addictive, and we need to stay away from things like that. And then when we go to work and we respond to things, you don't get that positive feedback, but your mind is fragmented all over the place. I think it causes something. I want to ask you that because many people are telling me they feel like on edge, excuse me, all day long without understanding why. Is this part of the digital overload? Does it keep your body stress response activated all the time? Even though you're right, we're not. When you mention that we're not built for that, AIS produced a documentary talking just about that called Mismatch. So if anybody out there wants to really see how we have not evolved to that, do that. But I want to ask you about that feeling of on edge all day, that physical response, even though we're physically safe.
Yeah, so everything that we do is changing our chemistry. And so a lot of times what people don't realize is that they're sending signals that things aren't right. And another thing is that our brain is like a computer in a sense. It runs an operating system, but the operating system that it runs is an ancient operating system that's not built for the demands. You mentioned all this information overload that we get in the digital age. We're not really designed for that. So one of the things that happens is that people they spend their time in a cave, in a box. Oftentimes they go from one box to another box to another box, which is one room to another room to a car to another building. And we're really disconnected from one key ingredient that you mentioned from Zen Brain, which is nature. We're a nature deficit society, and this creates a lot of problems. We also have limited social relationships. Over 20 years ago, when I saw the rise of technology, I predicted two things were going to happen. Attention deficit was going to rise because of the stimuli that our brain was getting, that was entraining our brain to become less and less focused, less able to really sustain attention for long periods. And the other one that I predicted was a rise in autism spectrum, social disorders, because kids at a young age were growing up in front of screens and not in front of people. They weren't reading the social cues, the facial cues. They were more comfortable in front of technology than in a person, so they felt out of place. And I've been running an anthropological study for well over a decade now with young kids, and I've worked with kids that struggle with all of these issues and others. And I can tell you that a lot of times you see this more in boys, and two, boys that are exposed to a lot of technology at a young age, whether video games, cell phones, etc. So it's not that it's a causative agent, but if I already have that kind of predisposition to be a little bit awkward socially, maybe, or I'm not really that focused, it's going to make the problem worse. So our brain really needs to move at a certain speed. And I did a video actually recently on AI stacks and adding more tools. And one of the things that I was telling one of my colleagues was, and he experiences as well, is as you add more, there's this pressure to just produce more. And you find yourself, and this has happened to me. I've been at places and I go on AI and I have AI do work for me. So I'm at a social event, but I'm doing work still. And
Right.
so it creates this like overdrive state all the time that is very unhealthy. And so it's one of the reasons why I often tell people that I mentioned this earlier, that our brain is not designed to run operations in parallel. Multitasking creates a lot of interference. I put a lot of burdens on my brain. It's overloaded. And I've done videos, and I also have a module that I teach that's called How an Overactive Brain Shortens Your Lifespan. And it also opens the door to one prediction that I made recently. The two predictions I made 2 decades ago are holding very strongly. Then one that I'm making now is, my prediction is that young millennials down in particular, we're going to see a catastrophic rise in early onset dementia. So a lot more Alzheimer's disease, a lot more cognitive decline, a lot more brain health issues, because we have to realize our brain is almost like our muscles. We can't just be holding away forever. We have to give our brain breaks. It
Yep.
cannot operate linearly. It's going to fall off a cliff. It needs to operate in cycles where you stress and then you recover. You stress and then you reset. You stress and then you recharge repeatedly throughout the day, so that we're more kind of optimized. And the thing is, like, our brain isn't weak. It's just we have an attentional system that was designed for maximum focus. When it activated stress, it was because there was really something wrong. There was either something I really needed to pay attention to. I'm a hunter. I really need to pay attention to the rustle in the grass or an animal moving, some cue in space, or danger. There's something that's going to attack me and I need to get away. This kind of like lower level stress that operates at all times is very, very destructive. When I was at Yale, and then I'll pause here, I saw the parallels between what, like when your brain is developing, you produce a lot of cells, brain cells, but you must also prune the brain, because you cannot have a brain that's too big. That can be problematic too. So there's cell death. And I noticed that there were parallels between chronic stress and some of these early pathways of cell death. And then I thought, could chronic stress over a lifetime activate pathways that inevitably lead to problems in my brain? For example, cell death that may relate to then Alzheimer's disease later on in life. And one of my colleagues was starting to find the evidence for this. This led me down to a rabbit hole that we can do another podcast episode on. That's very, very interesting, on the things that we're actually activating and how we're not cleansing the brain because of our habits, like being seated, for example, still for extended periods, shuts down this pumping mechanism we have that flushes our brain. So there's a lot of things that we don't realize that we're doing to ourselves in the digital age.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the the stress response, that rudimentary stress response in our body has a physiological consequence. I mean, it diverts blood, it increases heart rates, it increases your breathing, it has effects, but it's only meant for 15-minute little spurts. And then you're supposed to recover for hours. We don't get to do that. And I think you're right. I think that's one of the big problems. I did not think about the connection to Alzheimer's and autism, and that's a really good point. But it does explain why people feel on edge all day. They never get a chance to recover. You don't get a chance to because as soon as you're done, you get bing, another email, or ding, it's another text. And it's usually somebody that needs something. It's not, hi, I love you, unless it's your daughter. But, it's, hi, can you tell me how to, or can you tell me why this happened? It's so that constant stress has bad effects. And as you pointed out, maybe more than we know. Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is the fragmentation of our brain. When we're often, it causes a lot of problems. And one that we hear about a lot, and I'd like you to talk about it, because if you don't manage your stress, it leads to a diagnosable problem: anxiety, heart problems, depression, all these things. But one of the things that we hear about is the rising rates of those things, but also poor sleep, burnout, and how strongly that chronic stress affects these issues because of our digital habits. We have this inability, whether we really try or not, to disconnect. Dr. Kirsch, who's the president of AIS, says, to charge your phone, you need to plug it in. To charge your brain, you need to unplug it.
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you about these, how strongly these issues are tied to our digital habits, our inability to mentally disconnect, the sleep and the burnout. It's getting epidemic.
Yeah, it's so a couple of things happen. Like people who are really engaged in their phone, studies have shown that they develop this what's called they're unable to detect their interoception, like their internal sensor of awareness, to be able to know that something is wrong. Maybe they're in a higher physiological reactive state. One of the things that I've taught previously is that anxiety really is a signal. It's a signal that you're overdoing it. So a lot of times what people do is they label themselves as being anxious without realizing that it's really their habits, their lifestyle, how they're going about their day that is creating the brain's a state of their brain that is always telling them, stop, pause, you're overdoing it, you're about to fall off a cliff. Because it's really this kind of accelerator brake mechanism. Just like you said, device when it's used, it needs to be plugged in. When our brain is being overused, we need to unplug. And so if I'm going to be mindless, I need to have time being mindful. I can't be doing all the time. I have to learn how to just be. And so a lot of times we're tired a lot because we've started things over and over again. It goes back to the switch cost I talked about earlier, where we have this inability to filter out interference over time, and we become more prone to, I have my phone over here, to gaze over at the phone every time something flashes or what have you. And so one of the things that I always tell people is when they're working, really remove extraneous tabs, things that you're not using. Set blocks, almost like Pomodoro style, where you say, for the next 25 minutes, I'm going to focus. I'm going to lock in. I'm not doing anything else other than this. Then take a break and then go back for another round of focus work. If the job requires more than 25 minutes and you need to go longer, that's understandable. Then what you do there instead is you block out a longer period, but then take a longer break when you're done. I personally recommend people not to go longer than 90 minutes because there's something called ultradian cycles, like ultra, where our brain oscillates between periods of peak performance and then it starts to decay. And that's roughly around 90 minutes. In addition, people should also be aware of the fact that TED Talks are short for a reason, because for the most part, most people can't really go more than 15, 20, 30 minutes max without all of a sudden their attention starts to wane. And so the exhausting part, number one, is the switch tax that you have. The other thing is that we ignore the cycles, the signals. We just keep pushing. And as you keep pushing, your performance starts to decay. And eventually you just fall off a cliff. And that's where burnout lies, dysregulation lies, sleep issues lie. Because it goes to something that I teach, which is to go back and forth between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, between driving and pausing. And what happens is that people don't realize that sleep isn't a passive effect. It's not a passive response. You don't just let go. Your energy has to, you have to have enough energy left to send it over to the parasympathetic to start turning things down so that you can start to let go. You mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was when we started recording or previously, about blue light. So one of the things that happens is this is not really a main driver. It is a problem, but the main problem is the arousal. Because at night, when I'm supposed to let go, not only am I suppressing melatonin, because during the daytime outside right now, I look on my window here, there's blue light in the skyline. That blue light turns on serotonin so that I can gauge the outer world. If I don't turn on serotonin well, then that's why people associate serotonin with depression, lack of energy. It's because I'm still locked into a daydreamy state into the inner world rather than engaging the outer world. So I need to ramp that up. But then as the day wears on, the skyline is going to change. The sun starts to set, and now the color starts to turn yellow, orange, red. Or maybe I'm in front of a fireplace. Think of, again, the ancient operating system, what it's used to. And that starts to switch my chemistry from serotonin daytime to melatonin nighttime. But if I'm in front of a big screen that's giving me blue light, or I've been indoors all day, I have an erratic schedule, my body loses sense of time. It doesn't really know what time it is. And then all of a sudden, I'm not falling asleep when I should. And there's this critical time window that people bypass regularly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's when a lot of the cleansing that we can talk about in a future episode occurs. And I'm now staying up later, bypassing this critical time window because of my digital age habits, the blue light, the stimuli that I'm getting. Maybe I'm on social media raging about politics, or maybe I'm watching a movie that's too arousing for me. It's elevating
Yeah.
my stress hormones without me realizing. And that's where the problem lies.
You know what? You said a bunch of stuff there that I agree with. I want to talk about a couple of things. The blue light thing is absolutely true. And I have recently switched from like just playing games on my computer before I go to sleep to reading a book.
Oh, yeah.
So all you people out there that don't read books, there's another reason to read a book. There's no invasive blue light when you're reading a book. You can even buy book lights that have a subdued light. So just like, Brian said, you're going from daylight to a more subdued, calming tones of oranges and yellows into black, and that's the way your body is made. It's made to calm with the weaning of the day of this, and the night comes on. A lot of people have the habit. I know you'll agree with this. Before I go to sleep, let me check my email. Don't do that.
Devastating.
Nothing. It's nothing that can't wait till tomorrow. I mean, I promise. I did the same thing. Also, the other thing. So that's the whole thing about the blue light is that it keeps you thinking, your body thinking it's still daytime. It's not. It's time to rest, and that rest and recovery is really important. The other thing I wanted to talk about, both you and I have been teachers, and how long is an average class period? 45 minutes.
Or longer.
Or longer if there's block periods.
Yep.
You'll have a class for 90 minutes, one subject, one topic of that subject, sometimes intensely for that 90 minutes. So what are we teaching? And that's mostly for young adults in high school, sometimes middle school. But what are we teaching them? There's no way they can concentrate for that long on a specific topic without it having some detriment to their stress levels.
I mean,
I don't know the solution to that.
I still teach a class at my kids' school because I've been running that anthropological study I mentioned. Because a lot of what I do, I'm developing is really for that age group, young
Right?
millennials, young Gen Z, etc. And I designed the schedule because they do have block schedule. So the class is like an hour and 15, 20, something like that. It's really long. And you can imagine they come out of that, they've been sitting in a box. Nothing in the room is good for your brain. Your brain
Yeah.
requires a specific code that only nature can give the right stimuli. Technology could try to mimic some of this through natural sounds, landscapes, etc. Once you have like VR, you could try to mimic some of this, but it's really hard to mimic the math and the geometry inherent in nature. There was a recent study, I've been talking about this for years, and I saw a study recently on bird sounds and the effect that it has neurologically on us, how beneficial it is on us, because nature really is technology made by humans for the benefit of humans. I've said this repeatedly over and over. It really is an intelligent technology that's there for our benefit, and we're in a box and we're expecting kids that are on digital devices or playing video games to receive stimuli that's flashing, bright, engaging, and all of a sudden be in this classroom that they're going to find super boring, maybe a topic that they're not interested in. It's very hard for them to focus. And another thing is that people don't realize this is that the devices are also stimulating fight or flight response. Why? Because you do not see a lot of the stimuli you get from devices, the flashing, unless there's danger. Think of lightning or a fire. And so, in a sense, our brain, even when I go to take a break, what do a lot of young people do? They'll grab the device. That's their break. And what that's doing is keeps them locked in a
Right.
stress state that's running perpetually from the moment they wake up, especially if they grab the device early, which is a bad thing to do as well. You should guard the bookends of the day, guard the beginning of the day and the end of the day. No devices. And so
That's a great point.
yeah,
That
it's
so
really pervasive.
and that okay, so in between classes, I don't know if people watching this realize, but in between, like say Brian and my class,
Oh,
where
they're going to
they're
be on device.
intensely, huh?
They're going to
Where
be on device.
they have 4 minutes.
Yep.
That's not enough time for rest or recovery or to start switching. And you could go from an art class to a calculus class. Different parts of the brain. This is a whole nother topic. And by the way, the most stressed out person in that room is the teacher. When I taught, I would change, especially if it was a 90-minute class, which happened. I taught research practices. You would not go 15 minutes without changing, getting up, changing what you were doing to something else. Maybe more auditory, maybe more tactile, maybe more, using vision, but something to change to get over that stuck in that one area. It's a whole nother topic. But I do want to, a lot of people, which I wanted to talk to you about, a lot of people think that stress management simply means just relaxing. You believe stress management must also include, like you said, some nervous system training and regulating.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're a yoga master, if I'm correct, uh,
Yes.
and I know that involves a lot of retraining, maybe, or training, the initial training of your nervous system and how to regulate things. Talk to us about that. It's not, it doesn't mean just, okay, I'm going to stop for a minute and then get back into it. What
Yeah.
does it really mean?
The like people think of like a yogi, for example, as they actually were conducting the experiment within themselves. I always say the best teacher is direct experience.
Mm.
It's the one that's actually going to tell you how things work. It's the one that leads you to laws and not theories. Because theories come from science. A priori, beforehand, I have an assumption of how something works. I make a hypothesis, I design an experiment, and then I go set out to prove it. But that can lead you down a path where you end up realizing that it's a dead end. It's not really how things work. That's why theories evolve over time as we gain more clarity. And so what yogis were doing were they were actually doing experiments that now neuroscience is validating. So I don't really teach, in a sense, stress management. What I teach is training the brain. Because what we need to do in stress management is give people the tools, the skills to regulate their nervous system. The nervous system is just unregulated. So if I do this all the time, even though, do as I say, not as I do, people. I tell my wife when she's stressed out, I go, hey, babe, just relax. and,
Yeah,
and that's well-meaning, but it really is somewhat incomplete because her at that moment, her nervous system is just dysregulated. And telling her to relax is like telling somebody that who's never trained for a marathon to just go and run the marathon. It doesn't work like that. So relaxation is a momentary state. And yes, do we need to put ourselves in momentary states more often? Absolutely. So therefore, there has to be consistency. I need to integrate it regularly. So stress management really needs to be about consistency, integration into my daily routine, which in the work world that we live in, which is very industrial age, is very outdated. It's expecting people to wake up and work from 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and get a little break in between to eat and then go back on the grind. And that's not how our nervous system works. You just said it. This is not how the school system works. So what we want to do is to protect our nervous system's flexibility. We need to train its ability to move from, as I mentioned a little while ago, from activation to recovery. It's that kind of on and off switch that we talked about earlier. And the number one on and off switch is actually the breath. And I want people that watch this episode to do this for the next week. Run an experiment. I want you, while you're doing things, to bring attention to your breath. And what you're going to notice is that you're holding your breath a lot. Your breath is very shallow. We're barely breathing. And no wonder people then are tired, because the number one ingredient for energy, cellular energy, that your brain runs on is oxygen. That's the limiting reagent. And if I'm not breathing well, like after this talk, I'm going to be doing things. I'm probably going to be doing some breathing. I'm going to be doing some inversions, things that I teach in Zen Brain, to recharge, because I'm consuming energy while I'm speaking. So this is a skill. And like any skill, it builds on repetition. Another thing is that we can measure this capacity through heart rate variability, which is kind of a measure of our heart's rhythm, our vagus nerve, how well we engage that parasympathetic brake. And what happens is that their heart rate variability is very poor because of that underlying stress state that they're in. And if we train ourselves, we develop better stress resilience. We develop better emotional regulation, which is coming from the prefrontal cortex, and cognitive flexibility as well. And so again, the encouraging part here is it's not a dead end. It's not gloom and doom. Everything is trainable. That's why I always say,
Right.
Train the brain, or train the system, not just the habits.
And you know what? That was really the driving force behind AIS developing the Certified Stress Coach course, to teach people not only to manage their own stress, and we teach breath work because it's so important. I've always been a big believer, but also to recognize it in other people. The breathing thing, look around people. Look at the people that are stressed. You're going to see when they're breathing correctly, their shoulders are raising. They're breathing like that, and the people that are breathing correctly, their stomach is raised. You ever watch a baby breathe? Their stomach rises and lowers. Their stomach. You don't see their shoulders going and breathing incorrectly. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to make a Certified Stress Coach course. One of the best ways for you to calm that nervous system is to show someone else how to do it and do it with them. So you're right. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and you know what? Breath work is one of is the best way to do it because it's free and it's always with you. You don't need any special tools. You don't need any, and you don't need any technology to do it. You just
Like when my wife is awake, I know when she falls asleep because I just hear the change in the way that she's breathing.
right.
It switches. We have it within us. It's just we don't engage it a lot. Like I'm not, telling people you don't need an hour. You don't need
Yeah,
to go out hiking in nature for, like for a half a day or whatever. You just need to be more consistent. 5 minutes consistently spread out. 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes. And you start to build it into your routine so that at the end of the day, you're feeling better because you've been sloshing your energy back and forth between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Um, and yeah, like with regards to the course that you guys have, if there's anything that you want that you think I could add to the course, just let me know, and I'm more than happy to create like a little module
we're
specifically.
thinking about a second one. So you're definitely. I'm going to take you up on that offer. You know
Yeah,
what?
it's a lot of cool stuff
There is.
that's going on. Like I tell people do one thing that's actually a really great like little hack is integrate it into things that you already do. So, like, if I'm doing laundry, let me not do laundry while I'm watching TV. Maybe do laundry while I'm practicing a little breathing. When my kids were really young, I would integrate yoga, breathing, different things with them. I would get in the little pen that they had, a little gated area with a mat, and I'd be doing stretches and I'd be playing with them. So it's when you're able to integrate into things that you already do, it becomes easier then to do. And and so you want to add things that are beneficial to your nervous system that counter what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So when we're seated, we're not breathing, we're not moving. And so movement is critical. Breathing is critical. If I can go outside and get that natural light to cue my nervous system, to get me in sync with natural cues, while I'm walking, maybe I'm connected to my breath while I'm walking, maybe I'm doing like mindful walking, then I'm hitting three things there all at once. In the day and age where people are all about efficiency, they're busier than ever before, they want to maximize that, those 5 minutes in a sense, it becomes easier to do.
You know what? I am encouraged, though. I'll tell you why. I get to talk to young people, and every once in a while, more often than you would think, I hear them talking about ancient practices like breath work. A lot of them meditate. A lot of them understand what mindfulness is. When I was their age, I hadn't a clue. You asked me to meditate, I thought I was taking a nap. My daughter recently has gone into gardening. She's changed her backyard into a beautiful garden where she grows vegetables and flowers and all kinds of things that we talk about all the time. She's not only taken a break from technology. She's her boyfriend is a computer engineer, and she's been an engineer, and so they're always involved in technology. But her practices in the garden, I see such has had such a beneficial effect on her, both emotionally and physically, because she has to pick up 50-pound bags of mulch all the time. but it's a way of meditation. That
Yeah,
actually, that gardening is a way of meditating. You and I both have had experience with a little bit of Zen thinking, like you were talking about folding clothes. I do that when I fold clothes. I'm very Zen-like and about it.
yeah, I have a little Zen room in the backyard.
Yeah.
We moved recently, and in that room, I'm going to be setting it up for meditation. It has a big window that overlooks this natural preserve. I'm gonna have like a little bonsai tree. I do there also, not just meditating, but I do a lot of reflection, quiet work. I'm building out a little figurine. It's not a Lego, but it's like smaller pieces. It even requires more attention. And so I do a lot of things that are like that. I'm gonna set up like a little table to do calligraphy. So the more, like I had uh, somewhere where I taught this, the sacred art of gardening is something that's lost. The arts are so important for managing stress. So if somebody's listening to it, they have a child or an adolescent, get them involved, whether it's in sports, yoga, martial arts, dance, because a lot of these things are requiring you to learn skills. They're not just going to the gym and just repetitively doing something. It requires you to do a sequence of movements. It requires a lot more thoughtfulness and care and presence. And so, in a sense, it's training for the brain.
Mhm.
It integrates not just physical benefit, but also cognitive benefit, etc. So it's very good for us. And a lot of times, I see this. You mentioned the younger generation, and in some younger generation don't do any physical activity. They're just
No.
always very idle. It's very, really bad for your posture and other problems that it causes. But I do agree that they have a very different mindset now. It's not this industrial mindset that we grew up with, where it was like hustle culture and we'd be grinding and it's all about work ethic and we got to put in the hours to make it. They have a very different mindset, and maybe with technology and AI, they're able to be successful because they're able to free up time because they have AI at their disposal to really level up. I was meeting with somebody, a solopreneur recently. I'm a solopreneur as well. And a lot of the stuff that I'm building is just mostly just me because I leverage technology. And so I think the world is changing in ways that may take some of the load off and create more opportunity to be less stressed out. But I always tell people, if you have more time, free time, what are you doing with that time? How are you using it to
Yeah.
value, to build something meaningful for yourself or for others?
That's a really good point. What are you doing for yourself? Right? You spend all day going. I've been working for 59 years, and you're right. For old school, my thoughts were, if I wasn't working, why not? Well, why not? Well, because okay, I was involved in sports and other things too, and I didn't have the technology, so it was a little different. But you have to be what the world hands you. You have to deal with what the world hands you. Um, I know we're running long on time, and I don't want it to go too long because we could talk about this for a long time.
No, I
There's a
know
whole
my
bunch
wife
of
also has an interview soon. So,
okay. Last question. If you could give our listeners, up the people watching this, one practical piece of advice for them to protect their brain health and reduce that digital stress, and they could start today, what would that be?
yeah, if I only get one thing, it's protect, like I mentioned this earlier, protect the first and last hour from screens. The reason is because those two time windows are disproportionately powerful in terms of the effects that it has on our nervous system and our psyche. Why? Because when you're asleep, you go into theta and delta brainwave activity. You're progressively moving into deep, deep dreamless sleep. Then you start to awaken again and you have dreams, etc. When you wake up, your brain is in alpha brainwave state. It's a daydreamy state. It's a state that young kids are in. This is why you have to be careful with what you tell a child because their brain doesn't operate like ours on the day-to-day basis. They're a lot more creative, open-minded. They're like little sponges. They take stuff in. Your brain is in exactly that state the moment you wake up. You're groggy, you're daydreamy, you're not in beta brainwave state. Most people actually spend time in high beta, which is stress state. And so you're very vulnerable in that first window. That's a perfect window to get going, develop good habits, maybe go out for a walk to get that blue light, to start cueing yourself as daylight, get some contact, fresh air, come back in. You've done the things you need to do, maybe a healthy breakfast. You get ready, and now you're ready for the day. Then start grabbing devices. Like you said earlier, like When it's late, why are you checking your email? That can wait. If you just woke up, checking your email first thing, it just brings about problem. If all of a sudden there's this major problem, now you went from relaxation, you just recovered, and now you're in this riled up state. It happened to me this morning. Again, do as I say, not as I do. I grabbed the phone as I just woke up, and I have this device outside that measures water flow to detect a leak. There was some glitch and it detected a leak. There was no leak and it turned off the water. So I go over, there's no water. I'm like, oh, whatever. And so now I'm like thrown off. And my wife, a little while later, is like, oh, why are you so upset? And whatever. And it's probably triggered because of that,
Yeah.
because I did not protect the beginning of the day. Then at the end of the day, the problem that most people have is that they don't have habits conducive to sleep. We didn't do a deep dive in sleep, but sleep is a major issue because it's very bidirectional. What I do during the day deteriorates my sleep, and then my poor sleep, less quality, because it's not really about quantity, it's about quality of sleep, then impacts the next day. The next day, I wake up with a higher baseline cortisol than I did the day before and the day before and the day before. And again, that throws me off over time. And then you stack this. It's like Einstein said, compounding is like the eighth wonder of the world. It's a force, compounding interest. What we do compounds day after day, week after week, year after year. And eventually it's no surprise that when do people have the most sleep issues? When they're older, because it's a product of everything that we did. And oddly enough, we've talked about this digital age issue. It's huge. Absolutely. I said it kind of like Trump, huge. It's huge in elderly. I do events because I've been doing a lot of stuff on Alzheimer's disease recently. And I did an event recently for the elderly. It's a huge problem because not only do they have sleep issues, so they're not able to fall asleep, but then they're in front of screens. They're very addicted to digital devices on social media and watching videos and what have you. They're a lot more vulnerable than people think. It's not just a young kid issue, a teenage issue. It's almost like the extremes are the most impacted by this. So we need to protect the extremes in age as well as the extremes in the day-night cycle are bookends, because if you don't, creates a problem that often builds over time.
That it's a really good point. And being one of those elderly people that are addicted to screens, I think you're right. The bookends are very, very good practice. Protect the beginning of the day, protect your end of the day.
Yeah, if we develop the right habits, like if we have a nighttime ritual and a morning ritual, create those, work on those. And once you create those two rituals, then the other thing I would do is, what are you doing in between? Sandwich in between, sprinkle little things that you do throughout the day. Take the AIS course, learn some skills that you can integrate, not just teach, but also integrate to your own life. Because I feel like at the end of the day, whether you're a coach, a teacher, what have you, you gotta be an example as well. So it's good for you to integrate, to become less stressed, to become better, and then you can teach it to others. So
thank you. The other place that they should be looking is Brian Ramos's books, and you can find those like everything else on the planet on Amazon. I'm going to put up I'm going to put up the links for it and show you the copies of those books. Brian, thank you so much for doing this and being with us today. Also, thank you for all you do to bring awareness to this issue and all the things we talked about today. So,
I say this in The Art of Stress-Free Living. There's two silent killers in our generation. Inflammation is one of them. The other one is stress. And so we don't realize it's doing away at us, and it correlates with almost every disease you can think of. Stress just makes things worse. It's good in the short term. We need stress to get stuff done. But you can't have it on overdrive.
And I think that's a good place for us to stop. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been your host. I'm Will Heckman. I want to remind everyone that just as stress is different for each of us, there's no one stress reduction or management strategy. that's right for everyone. So make sure you join us the next time, because we're going to speak about more stretch management strategies and insights. So see you then. Good day, everyone.